All right, welcome. This is a very exciting moment because today we are making our transition from Walt Whitman and Emily Dickinson to Langston Hughes. In doing so, we are moving from the 19th century to the 20th. That's right. We are going to be transitioning from Walt Whitman to Langston Hughes. I've titled this lecture I for a reason that will become very clear shortly. However, before we begin, I want to have a quick review of three key words for our figurative language. For instance, alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of consonants or vowels at the start of successive words. So Emily Dickinson uses the line, "my labor and my leisure too." And when she uses this, it emphasizes that how completely she's left behind those parts of her world, right? Labor being work, leisure being play or relaxation. Right? Those things are left behind. And so by using the alliteration, she emphasizes just how completely she's left behind that former world. Anaphora. Anaphora is the repetition of successive words or phrases in lines. So alliteration is successive repetition in words, and anaphora is successive repetition in lines. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the field of grazing grain. We passed the setting sun. And so here, the effect of the anaphora is to emphasize the journey that they go on. And it also emphasizes the wordplay, how she's leaving these things in the past, P-A-S-T, because there is a homophone, past P-A-S-S-E-D and past P-A-S-T. And then finally, synecdoche. Synecdoche means part for the whole. And what we had as an example is the eyes around had wrung them dry and breaths were gathering firm. Fundamentally, all this means is that the people that are mourning the death of the speaker have cried so much that they have no more tears, and they're starting to regroup and find their strength again. So again, to emphasize that these are all different terms, but what they do is they give us access into the poem and discussing the poem with greater specificity. On to our, the thrust of the lecture today. So something that we talked about quite a bit with Walt Whitman was this idea of the one and the many, the one and the many. So for example, in When I Heard the Learned Astronomer, the speaker is in a crowded lecture hall, but by the end of the poem, he's left that lecture hall and is alone to look at the stars. And so we thought about the idea of the one and the many being you leave the crowd in order to do the actual learning that happens between you and nature. In By the Bivouac's Fitful Flame, Walt Whitman is awake, the speaker is awake and looking at the flame while all of the sleeping army is around him. And then in A Glimpse, we saw it used a little bit differently, where we focused on the two boyfriends in a crowded bar. So there's all these other people there, and yet we can isolate the two individuals. So this is from Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, which is a multi-part, very long poem from Leaves of Grass. And let's look at it. I celebrate myself and sing myself. And what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spring spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this air, this soil, born here of parents, born here from parents the same and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health, begin, hoping to cease, not till death. Creeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor, for good or bad, I permit to speak at every hazard, nature without check, with original energy. So let's just start with this first line. Notice the repetition of myself and I. We have a major focus on the first person singular speaker. I celebrate myself, right? I don't need other people to talk about me, and I'm not going to talk about other people. I'm focusing in on myself. And what I assume, you shall assume. You, of course, is the reader. So what Whitman is saying is like the individual that's speaking here has all of the information that the reader is also going to have and take. And then every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. As good here means equally. So this is a sense of radical humanity, right? Humanity. I recognize that you're an individual and I'm an individual. However, in this poem, I'm talking about my own individuality. So we have this plurality of anybody that's reading, the many, against the I of the speakerly persona. Stanza 2. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. Here we have alliteration with lean and loaf. To loaf means to relax. It's like when you're lying on your belly, kicking your feet around in the air. It's kind of like leaning on his elbow, super relaxed, at ease. But then look at that big word, observing. 3 syllables right in the middle of this line. So it's kind of a focus word there. And he's doing something very, very interesting, right? Observing a spear, which is one, of summer grass, which is many, right? So this idea of I'm focusing in on this singular. And this is related to the title of this collection of poetry, Leaves of Grass, right? Individual pieces of grass, looking at the individual among the many, the one among the many. My tongue, every atom of my blood formed, and that should be nice. You'll recognize that contracted form, that contracted word that we're accustomed now to seeing from Whitman. Formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. So we have kind of a really interesting set of repetitive phrases. Born here, and then the same, the same. And this gives us a sense of cyclicity, that is, of a cycle that's happening. And then we get something amazing. I, now 37 years old and in perfect health, begin, hoping to cease not till death. Begin what? One thing that we might suggest is being a poet, being an individual. And then we pick it up. Creeds and schools in abeyance. To be in abeyance means you've stopped something. You've halted it. You moved it to the side. And what is he moved beside? Belief, accepted belief, and learning, right? And I want to emphasize something here. Whitman is not saying you don't need school. He's saying, I've learned the rules and I've learned the accepted beliefs, and now I'm writing my own poem. I'm putting those things to the side. I'm stopping them. And he's going to write his free-form verse as a result. So this is a really, really important line to understanding Whitman's rule breaking with the practices of poetry. He is not writing poetry without knowing other poetry exists. He is instead creating a new type of poetry, having made the decision to step away from these other forms, right? Stepping away, retiring back a bit. Well, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten, right? I did my schooling, I learned my creeds, and I'm making a decision not to follow them. And then it finishes up, I harbor, meaning I hold back, I hold safely. A harbor is a place of safety for boats, so he's using that metaphor there. I permit to speak at every hazard. So no matter the risk, right? And that's why we have quite a few potentially controversial topics when he talks about his homosexuality, for instance. And then nature without check with original energy. I can't emphasize enough how important that word original is. He is saying there's been other poets, but I have something new. We also have a really interesting discourse that happens in this poem that I'm not going to go into right now about scientific language that he connects to being an original poet. So I just want to draw attention that it does exist. However, I'm not going to go into it. So what this brings us to is our transition to our next poet, which is Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes. So Langston Hughes was born in 1902 and he died in 1967. And he's born in Joplin, Missouri. However, he went to high school for 2 years in Cleveland, Ohio, here in Cleveland, Ohio. Where is Cleveland? Cleveland. But he's most famous, of course, for his literary career in Harlem, New York. And there, he was a key member of the Harlem Renaissance. And to very, very grossly oversimplify the Harlem Renaissance, it was a 1920s cultural fluorescence with innovations by Black artists and thinkers that has had a global impact in the arts, society, and life. This very well might be your first introduction to this phrase, Harlem Renaissance. And a renaissance means a rebirth. You may have heard of the Italian Renaissance before, thinking of like Michelangelo, for instance, or your Ninja Turtles in general. But this is the Harlem Renaissance. And if this is the first time you're hearing about this, that's really exciting. It will not be the last time you hear about it. It comes up a lot. And once you start looking into it, I think you'll find a lot to really enjoy. But let's now look at kind of a programmatic poem by Hughes. Programmatic means laying out one's personal agenda. So in the same way that, let's go back, Whitman said, I celebrate myself and sing myself, as he talks about being from the same place, right? And when he says born here, he's really saying born here in America. So Hughes will pick that up. Hughes is I too from 1925. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes. Nobody'll dare say to me, eat in the kitchen. Then, besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. And so we open then with this adverb of to. And what that's standing in for is in addition to Whitman. Right? I am going to be an American poet declaring myself singing this country. It's not just Whitman's experience, it's mine. And why? Because Whitman could not speak for me. Whitman was a white man. Whitman can't speak about the Black experience in America. We pick this up, the really important word here, this third person plural pronoun in line 3, they. Send me to eat in the kitchen. This is white people segregating. So this is segregation, right? When company comes, oh yeah, sure, sometimes I'm part of their world, but if other white people come, they send me to eat in the kitchen. But, he says, I laugh and eat well and grow strong. And something that I want to suggest here is getting education, right? The kitchen is kind of a metaphor for school in this way. Like there's nourishment, there's food. Even though they're segregating me, I'm still getting that food that's there in the kitchen, and I'm going to use it. With the result that tomorrow, and tomorrow just means the future, I'll be at the table when company comes. So something I can suggest here for what the table is the syllabus. And again, there's a lot of different ways to interpret the poem. This is just the one way that I want to present it to you, right? And so today, there was a reason why we read Langston Hughes alongside Emily Dickinson, alongside Walt Whitman, alongside any of the number of other poets that we are going to study together. But Langston Hughes has declared, I'm going to be part of that when company comes. In that way, it's kind of like future students are that company. And nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. So this is a declaration of excellence, right? This is a singularly confident thing to say, along the lines of the confidence that we see in Walt Whitman. Besides, he continues, they'll see how beautiful I am and to be ashamed. How beautiful, right? This might refer to poetics or the poetic voice, right? He's going to write beautiful poetry. And again, there's other ways of taking this. Very, very interesting idea, though, comes up with they'll be ashamed. And something, and this is not a thing to which I have an answer, but is this a bit optimistic? This idea that white supremacists will feel shame at some point when they recognize Langston Hughes. So this is a position that you can have a voice on. But most powerfully, we end with this last line. I too am America. I too, white poets, white supremacists, anybody else that tries to deny me a place, I too am America. So I look forward to reading more Hughes with you as we go forward. His voice is singular and yet a multitude.